Donald Trump signs an order to reduce drug prices, but it's unclear how it would work. This is from NPR talking about how Donald Trump wants Medicare to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies and give U.S. consumers the best price possible for their prescription drugs.
The president is taking aim once again at prescription drug prices. He signed a new executive order today that he says will mean Americans will not subsidize drug development for the rest of the world through high U.S. prices. NPR Pharmaceuticals.
Okay, this is that statement is immediately wrong. The American citizen is going to subsidize drug development regardless. Because do you know who funds the R&D for these drug companies? The taxpayer. This is universal. Well, maybe not universal because because other countries have better healthcare systems that are taxpayer funded, but the taxpayer funds the R&D for these companies. It's very simple. Companies like Merck, like Eli Lilly, by the way, had a 24% profit margin for fiscal year 2024, multiple billions of dollars in profit. Just keep that in your noggin for a little bit. These companies would not do R&D for drugs because R&D requires a sizable amount of funding, but more importantly, a considerable amount of time. Even the COVID vaccine, which was seemingly put together in a couple of months, had decades of research behind it leading up to it. Companies are inherently short-sighted. They operate on a quarter-by-quarter basis. And if there is something that won't immediately make them money, they are not going to invest in it. That is why the government has to step in and say, we will subsidize the R&D for these drugs, which allows the drug companies to make a fuckload of money on the back end, because they're not, the only thing they're paying for is the manufacturing of these drugs.
Sydney Lupkin is here to break it down for us. Hi, Sydney.
Hi.
Okay, so walk us through what the president says he's trying to do here exactly.
So he's taking aim at the fact that Americans generally pay a lot more for prescription drugs than other developed countries. And that's something both parties can agree on.
Okay.
Merck's cancer drug Keytruda costs more than $100,000 more in the United States than in Germany, for instance. And
Wow.
that's according to a recent Senate committee report authored by Democrats. So today's executive order is geared toward lowering prices paid in the U.S. to make them more in line with what people pay in these other countries. And it's called Most Favored Nation pricing. Here's President Trump talking about it at the White House this morning.
Whoever is paying the lowest price, we will look at that price and we will say that's the price we're going to pay.
Trump also wants to see other countries pay more, and he seemed to be pushing drug companies to advance that cause. But other countries typically have government healthcare systems that set prices that they're willing to pay. So why would they change? The United States, by and large, doesn't set prices, so drug companies have more freedom to set prices with what the market will bear.
Okay, well,
Exactly. And this is why the healthcare system in the United States is so sinister, because it is a capitalist healthcare system where all of the power is in the hands of these companies. And these companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the medical device companies, the insurance companies, are allowed to extort their patients. This does not happen in other countries. This does not happen in Japan or in South Korea or in Italy or France or even like fucking Mexico or literally any other country on the planet. The reason that doesn't happen is because all of these countries have nationalized these respective industries, because these industries are necessary for people to survive, right? You see horror stories about cancer patients who are denied chemotherapy treatment, or how there was most recently there was this one gentleman who was in line to receive a lung transplant, and his insurance company said, actually, no, go fuck yourself. And I'm sure like you guys have experiences where your insurance company denied something or charged you unfairly for something. I've had experiences like that. Fortunately, it was only like a couple of bucks, right? For I was wrongly charged for a service that I received during my annual physical. It's only $80, but it's the principle of the situation. While this is a good first step, this should be the first step in get in building a single payer healthcare system and nationalizing the pharmaceutical industry. Now, this is something that, again, all of the countries have done. But the reason that these countries have tremendous leverage in this situation, there's a famous video of China, of the Chinese government negotiating with a prescription drug company. And it's basically like they are arguing down to the penny. Like the Chinese government is like, no, we're going to buy insulin for 275 US from you. And they're like, what about 280? And they're like, no, you're going to pay 275 and you're going to fucking like it. These governments have the capacity to manufacture generic drugs, which they would be able to sell back to the consumer at a fraction of the price because the profit incentive has been the profit motive has been eradicated. California almost did this before Gavin Newsom chickened out like the little fucking baby, the greasy baby that he is. If you go to a company and you tell them that you either sell these drugs at this price or in X amount of years, we will kick you out of this market, they're going to take the money, even if it is a reduced amount, because they would rather make a little money than no money.
What does this executive order entail exactly?
It has several parts. It directs the administration to come up with target prices and share them with the industry within 30 days. If companies don't voluntarily comply, the order lays out steps the administration could take to force those lower prices, including by making administrative rules, for example. The executive order also directs the Health and Human Services Secretary to facilitate direct to consumer drug sales, bypassing health insurance at lower prices. Meanwhile, it also directs the U.S. Trade Representative and Department of Commerce to take action against, quote, unreasonable and discriminatory policies that lower drug prices outside the U.S. So the order is pretty broad and a lot is happening at once.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that this is like already facing legal hurdles, but another reason why I don't believe that this is going to happen is, let's say hypothetically that this does manage to pass the House and go through Congress, which it hasn't because Bernie Sanders has introduced similar legislation to this and it fucking died immediately. It was like a baby turtle that hatched on the beach and got taken by a crab before it could reach the water. These mechanisms that the Trump administration is looking to put into place will not be able to hold the companies in check because the Trump administration has been fervently dismantling these agencies at every possible step. So that way they have been neutered, right? Investigating it being investigated by these various entities is not going to be possible if these entities are working with these agencies are working with a skeleton crew.
Does the administration even have the authority to do all of these things?
So, rulemaking to implement existing laws is
Uh-huh.
something the administration can and does do fairly routinely. But there's a lot this executive order that's still hazy. It's not clear from this order which drugs the administration would target. Trump seemed to want to go after obesity drugs during the press conference. It's also not clear which countries' prices could be used for comparison. And of course, there's a big question around how the Trump administration can push drug makers to get other countries to pay more. Juliet Kubansky, a Medicare drug pricing expert at the nonpartisan research group KFF, says she has a lot more questions than answers right now. It could be really good for patients and payers, she says.
But I think the question really is in the details of how this gets implemented.
Right. And what has the drug industry said about all of this?
So, when Trump teased this executive order Sunday on Truth Social, the drug industry trade group Pharma came out against it. The CEO for the group called it a bad deal for American patients.
I would put that guy in prison, I think. I think that would be a stipulation. Yeah, I'm going to be a little dictatorial in this aspect. I literally do not give a fuck about what you have to say if you are the CEO of a prominent drug company or a prominent drug lobbying group. You have done more harm to this country than good. You are a shit stain on the underpants of the United States. You do not deserve to have an opinion on this situation. It really is that simple. If you are lobbying on behalf of these companies to either withhold or extort people for life-saving drugs, I think that you are complicit in manslaughter at the least and murder at the worst.
After the executive order was signed, he released another statement. It said Americans shouldn't have to foot the bill for global innovation. And to lower cost, America is right to push other countries to pay their fair share through trade negotiations. Though I should
This
say
like that is also entirely cooked up. Why do you give a fuck? Why do you still want the drug companies to make as much money as possible? Like, why do you want Eli Lilly to maintain a 25% profit margin? I literally want these companies to be afraid of these nations' governments. I want them to cower when they have to face a head of state. Everybody should be treated like Jack Ma, like how China treated Jack Ma if they act out. You are a multi-billionaire, you're the CEO of a massive pharmaceutical company. I want you to get anxiety shits when you have to come into the Oval Office. Like I what is with this rationale? Like who gives a fuck? And as far as the specifics go, who gives a shit about that either? Like why does it have to be so specific? You can just print up a list of all of the drugs. You can gather the data on what other countries pay, or maybe not what other countries. Let's take why don't we take like the G7, right? You have the US, Italy, Canada, Japan, China. You compare all of those numbers, and whoever's is the lowest, you say match it. And if you don't, you have 5 years or however long it would take to manufacture all of these drugs, and then you're cut off from the American market. Yeah, get fucked. You think I feel sympathy? You think I feel sympathy that the CEO of Merck is not going to be able to buy another fucking yacht? You think that you really think that I feel bad for that guy when that one person is directly responsible for untold amounts of despair that he causes all of these families to feel when his company refuses to provide life-saving medication at an affordable price? He can suck my dick to the base with both balls in his mouth